She had one rule: survive the night without being noticed. But when the pistol hammer clicked, echoing through the silent ballroom, Beatrice Galloway made a choice that would shatter the British aristocracy. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She stepped into the center of the candlelight, grabbed the collar of the dirty, beaten man on his knees, and silenced the executioner with a kiss. She thought she was saving a condemned thief from a drunkard's bullet. She didn't know the man in her arms was Arthur St. Clair, the Duke of Stirling, the wealthiest man in England, and he was about to make her his Duchess, whether she wanted it or not. The air inside Blackwood Hall tasted of stale wine, expensive powder, and moral decay. It was the winter of 1794, and the London season had bled into something darker, a private gathering for those whose appetites could no longer be sated by the polite quadrilles of Almack's. Beatrice Galloway stood in the shadows of the mezzanine, gripping the velvet railing until her knuckles turned white. She shouldn't be here. If her aunt, Lady Genevieve, knew that her penniless niece had donned a stolen domino mask to infiltrate Lord Vane's notorious gambling den, Beatrice would be on a carriage to a nunnery in Yorkshire by sunrise, but Beatrice had no choice. Her brother, Thomas, had left his marker here, a debt of £3,000. If she didn't steal the ledger tonight, Thomas would rot in Newgate Prison. Place your bets, gentlemen. The main event. The voice belonged to Lord Silas Vane, a man whose face was as sharp and cruel as a shard of glass. The crowd below, a sea of masked anonymity, surged forward. Beatrice peered down. In the centre of the room, cleared of card tables, a man was dragged in by two burly guards. He was a wreck. His white shirt was torn open to reveal a bruised chest, his dark hair matted with sweat and grime. His hands were bound behind his back, yet he did not stumble. He walked with a strange, terrifying grace, his eyes dark and burning with a cold fury that seemed to lower the temperature of the room. They say this rogue was caught stealing from the treasury, Vane announced, swirling his brandy. But I say he's just a spy, and spies, well, they don't have rights, do they? The crowd murmured. Beatrice felt a chill. This wasn't a game of cards. It was a blood sport. The game is Russian Roulette, but with a twist. Vane sneered, pulling a flintlock pistol from his coat. I fire. If he flinches, I win. If he stands stone still, well, perhaps I let him live another hour. Vane raised the pistol. The bound man didn't blink. He just stared at Vane, his jaw set like granite. Beatrice's heart hammered against her ribs. This was murder, plain and simple. The man on the floor looked at no one, asking for no mercy. He looked resigned, but not defeated. He looked like a wolf caught in a trap, waiting to bite his own leg off to escape. 1, Vane counted, cocking the hammer. The room went deathly silent. Beatrice looked at the ledger on the table near the door, her target. Then she looked at the man. If Vane pulled that trigger, the chaos would make it impossible to grab the book. But that wasn't why her feet started moving. It was the look in the prisoner's eyes. It was a look she had seen in the mirror every morning since her father died and left them destitute. The look of someone who had been strong for too long. 2. Vane's finger tightened on the trigger. Beatrice didn't think. She didn't calculate. She let the instinct that had kept her family alive take over. She tore the mask from her face. It would only hinder her vision, and practically vaulted down the small staircase. "Stop!" she cried out, her voice cracking but loud. The crowd gasped. A woman, unmasked, in a plain grey dress that marked her as a nobody, was storming the floor. Vane turned, startled. "Who the devil—" Beatrice didn't stop. She reached the centre of the circle just as Vane levelled the gun back at the prisoner. She needed a distraction. She needed to shock Vane into lowering the weapon. She needed to claim the prisoner as something Vane couldn't touch. She threw herself at the bound man, shielding his body with hers. The smell of him hit her instantly. Iron, rain, and sandalwood beneath the grime. She grabbed his face between her hands. His skin was fever-hot. He looked down at her, his dark eyes widening in genuine shock. "What are you—" She didn't let him finish. She crushed her mouth to his. It wasn't a romantic kiss. It was a desperate collision. It was a seal, a claim, a barrier. She kissed him with every ounce of fear and adrenaline she possessed, signaling to the room, "He is mine." For a second, he went rigid. Then, a low rumble vibrated in his chest. To her shock, he didn't pull away. He leaned into her, his bound hands straining, his presence suddenly enveloping her like a storm cloud. Beatrice broke the kiss, breathless, and spun around to face Vane, keeping her body between the gun and the prisoner. "You cannot shoot him," she declared, her voice ringing clear now. Vane lowered the pistol, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "And why is that, little mouse? Is this filth your lover?" Beatrice lifted her chin. "He is my husband." The lie hung in the air, heavy and absolute. The silence that followed was louder than the pistol shot would have been. The man behind her shifted. Beatrice could feel the heat radiating off him. She prayed he wouldn't speak. She prayed he wouldn't deny it. "Lord," Vane laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Your husband? You, a frantic little sparrow in a dress 3 seasons out of fashion, are married to this drifter." "It was a private ceremony." Beatrice lied smoothly, her mind racing. "He has debts, yes. Debts I am here to settle. But if you kill him, Lord Vane, you kill the man who owes you money. A corpse cannot pay." Vane's eyes narrowed. He was a gambler, and he was calculating the odds. "He doesn't owe me money, sweetheart. He owes me his life. He was trespassing." "He was looking for me," Beatrice countered. We argued." Vane stepped closer, the tip of the pistol now pointing at Beatrice's chest. "You have spirit. I like that. But I think you're lying. I think you're just a girl who wandered into the wolf's den." "Test me," Beatrice challenged, though her knees were shaking. "Very well." Vane holstered the gun. "If he is your husband, take him. But his debt stands. £5,000, payable by dawn, or I'd take him back. And I'd take you as interest." £5,000. It was a fortune. It was more money than Beatrice had ever seen, but she nodded. "Done." "Cut him loose." Vane ordered the guards. The ropes were sliced. The man didn't rub his wrists. He moved instantly, his hand coming to rest on the small of Beatrice's back. The touch was possessive, heavy, and startlingly familiar. "Come, wife," he whispered, his voice a rough rasp that sent a shiver down her spine. "We should go home." They walked out of Blackwood Hall together, Beatrice trembling, the man supporting her weight, while pretending to lean on her. They didn't speak until they were out in the cold London fog, 3 streets away, in a dark alleyway where the gas lamps didn't reach. Beatrice collapsed against the brick wall, gasping for air. "You're welcome," she choked out. "Now go. Get out of London before Vane realizes I don't have 5 pence, let alone £5,000. The man stood straight, stretching his shoulders. The vulnerability he had shown in the hall evaporated. In the moonlight, Beatrice saw his face clearly for the first time. High cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and eyes that were too intelligent, too commanding for a common thief. "You don't have the money?" he asked, his tone dry, almost amused. "Of course I don't," Beatrice hissed. "I'm a governess. I was there to save my brother. I just saved your life with a lie, and now we're both dead by dawn if we don't vanish." He stepped closer, trapping her against the wall. He was tall, looming over her. He reached out, not to hurt her, but to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers were rough, but his touch was gentle. "You kissed me?" he said softly. "I had to." "You called me your husband." "I was improvising." "You just indebted yourself to Silas Vane for £5,000 to save a stranger." I couldn't watch him kill you." The man stared at her for a long moment, as if he were memorizing her face. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed, a perfect, courtly bow that belonged in the throne room of St. James, not a dirty alley. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," he said, straightening his cuffs, ignoring the blood on them. "I am not a thief, nor am I a spy." Beatrice blinked. "Who are you?" "I am Arthur St. Clair." Beatrice ceased to breathe. The name hit her like a physical blow. Arthur St. Clair, the Duke of Stirling, the man who owned half of Cornwall, shipping lines in the Indies, and had the ear of the king. He was the most elusive, powerful bachelor in the empire, and he was supposed to be in Vienna on diplomatic business. You are the Duke of Stirling," she whispered. "Currently, I am a man who owes his life to a brave, foolish woman," Arthur said, "and since you have so publicly declared us married, Miss Galloway, Beatrice Galloway. Since we are married, Miss Galloway?" Arthur's eyes glinted with a dangerous light. "I suppose I should take you to my townhouse. We have a debt to pay at dawn, and I never like to keep my creditors waiting." "You have the money?" "Beatrice," he said, his voice dropping to a seductive purr. "I have all the money, but Vane doesn't want money. He wants power, and tonight you gave me the perfect weapon to destroy him." He offered her his arm. It was dirty, blood-stained, and the most reassuring thing she had ever seen. "Come," the Duke said, "let us go show London exactly who you just saved." The carriage ride to Grosvenor Square was a blur of silence and tension. Beatrice couldn't bring herself to think of him as the Duke, while he was bleeding on the velvet seats, had signalled a passing hackney with a whistle that pierced the night. When they arrived at the massive limestone mansion that was Stirling House, the reaction of the staff was immediate and terrifying. "Your Grace." The butler, a man named Kensington who looked like he was carved from oak, nearly dropped his lantern. "We thought, reports said you were captured in France." "I was closer than France, Kensington," Arthur said, stepping out and pulling Beatrice with him, "and I would be dead if not for this lady. Prepare the blue suite, draw a bath, and send for my physician. And Kensington?" "Yes, Your Grace." "Send a runner to the Bank of England. Wake the governor if you must. I need £5,000 in gold, delivered to Lord Vane's estate at first light. And attach a note." Arthur turned to look at Beatrice, who was standing shivering on the cobblestones. The note should read, "Payment for the debt of the Duchess of Stirling." Beatrice gasped. You can't maintain the lie, Your Grace. It was a ruse to get out of the room." Arthur turned to her, his face serious. "Vane saw your face, Beatrice. He knows who you are now. If I claim you are a stranger, he will hunt you down to get to me, or simply out of spite." He is a man who breaks things he cannot own. The only way you are safe is if you are untouchable. And the only thing untouchable in this city is a duchess. But we aren't married. Arthur walked up the steps, his limp becoming more pronounced now that the adrenaline was fading. Technicalities. We have 6 hours until dawn, enough time to clean up, dress, and perhaps negotiate the terms of our alliance. Inside, the house was a palace. Gilded frames, marble floors, the smell of beeswax and lilies. Beatrice felt painfully small in her grey wool dress. "Why were you there?" she asked quietly as they ascended the grand staircase. Why was the Duke of Stirling being held by a gambling lord? Arthur paused on the landing. The gaslight caught the sharp angles of his face. Vane isn't just a gambler, Beatrice. He's blackmailing half of Parliament. He stole a ledger, a list of names of those loyal to the crown and those secretly funding the French revolutionaries. I went to get it back. I failed. Beatrice's hand flew to her pocket, the leather-bound book she had swiped from the table near the door. In the chaos of the kiss and the confrontation, she had completely forgotten it. "A ledger?" she asked faintly. "Black leather. Silver clasp." Arthur turned slowly. "Yes. How do you know?" Beatrice reached into her pocket and pulled out the small book. I was there to steal my brother's debt marker. I grabbed this by mistake when I ran to you." Arthur stared at the book. Then he looked at Beatrice. A slow, incredulous laugh escaped him. "You didn't just save my life," he murmured, taking the book from her hands. "You just saved the monarchy." He stepped closer, ignoring the servants fluttering around them. He took her hand and raised it to his lips, kissing the knuckles, his eyes locking onto hers. "Beatrice Galloway," he said. "I've been looking for a partner who isn't afraid of fire. It seems I found her." "I am not your partner," Beatrice said, though her voice trembled. "I am a girl with no dowry, a reckless brother, and a reputation that is currently in tatters." "Reputation is a game men play to control women," Arthur said firmly. "I don't care about your reputation. I care about your courage. Marry me. For real." Beatrice pulled her hand back. "You are delirious from blood loss. You cannot propose marriage to a stranger you met an hour ago just because she found your book." "I am proposing," Arthur said, his intensity returning, "because when you kissed me you didn't tremble. You claimed me, and I found that I quite liked being claimed." He swayed then, his eyes rolling back slightly. Kensington caught him before he hit the floor. "Your Grace." "I'm fine," Arthur mumbled, fighting to stay conscious. "Just don't let her leave. She's vital." As the servants carried the unconscious Duke away to his chambers, Beatrice stood alone in the hallway of the richest house in England. She looked at her reflection in a massive gilded mirror. Her hair was wild, her lips were swollen, and her eyes looked like she had just woken up. She was trapped. If she left, Vane would kill her. If she stayed, she was agreeing to a charade with a man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. She took a deep breath and smoothed her skirt. "Well, Beatrice," she whispered to the empty hall, "you wanted an adventure. God help you." Sunlight did not ask permission to enter the blue suite of Stirling House. It invaded, piercing through heavy velvet curtains that had not been drawn tight enough. Beatrice woke with a gasp, her body jerking upright in a bed that was larger than her entire apartment in Cheapside. For a terrifying moment she forgot. She forgot the smell of gunpowder, the taste of fear, and the reckless kiss that had sealed her fate. Then she looked down. She was wearing a silk nightshirt that wasn't hers. It was monogrammed with a sprawling A.S., and her grey wool dress was gone. The dress was burned, Miss Galloway. It was covered in the blood of a peer of the realm, and frankly, the fabric was an insult to the season. Beatrice whipped her head around. Standing by the fireplace, leaning heavily on a cane, was Arthur St. Clair. He looked devastating. The grime of the previous night was gone. He was bathed, shaved, and dressed in a dark blue dressing gown that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. But his pallor was grey, and a linen bandage peeked out from the collar of his robe. He held a cup of tea in one hand, his dark eyes watching her, with an intensity that made Beatrice pull the duvet up to her chin. "You're awake," she whispered. "I am," Arthur said, his voice rougher than she remembered, stripped of the adrenaline of the gambling hall. "And you are still here. I won the bet." "What bet?" "I bet myself that you wouldn't run away in the night. Kensington, my butler, wagered 5 sovereigns that you would steal the silver and flee." Arthur limped closer, placing the tea on the bedside table. "I am pleased to say Kensington is now 5 sovereigns poorer." Beatrice bristled, her pride stinging. "I am not a thief, Your Grace. I told you I was saving my brother." "And yet—" Arthur sat on the edge of the bed, invading her space with casual arrogance. "You hold the ledger that could hang half the House of Lords. You are either the most innocent woman in London, or the most dangerous." Beatrice looked at his hands, clean now, but she remembered how they had felt on her waist. "I should go. My aunt will have the constabulary looking for me." "Your aunt," Arthur said calmly, "believes you are currently in negotiations for a position as a companion to the Dowager Duchess of Stirling. I sent a note this morning." Beatrice's mouth fell open. "You lied to my aunt. I bought you time and protection." Arthur leaned in, his face inches from hers. "Silas Vane is not a man who forgets. He knows you humiliated him. He knows you hold the ledger. If you leave this house as Beatrice Galloway, spinster and governess, you will be dead by sundown. A tragic accident, a carriage gone off the road, a mugging gone wrong." The air in the room grew heavy. Beatrice knew he was right. She had seen the cold emptiness in Vane's eyes. "So, what do you propose?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I propose you finish what you started," Arthur said. "You claim to be my wife. Be my wife." "You cannot be serious. You are the Duke of Stirling. I am nobody. The scandal alone—" "The scandal is exactly what I need," Arthur snapped, his composure cracking for a split second to reveal a desperate anger beneath. He stood up, pacing despite his injury. "Do you know why Vane held me? Do you know why I was in that hellhole? Because the vultures are circling, Beatrice. They think I am weak. They think the St. Clair line is ending because I refuse to marry the empty-headed chits they parade before me at Almack's." He turned to her, his eyes blazing. "If I marry a nobody, a woman who walked into a gunfight to save me, it sends a message. It tells them I am unpredictable. It tells them I value loyalty over lineage. And it gives me a duchess who has already proven she has more courage than the entire cabinet combined." Beatrice felt a flush rise from her chest to her cheeks. It wasn't just fear. It was a strange, heady mix of power and attraction. He wasn't asking for a broodmare. He was asking for an ally. "And what do I get?" Beatrice asked, lifting her chin. "Besides a target on my back." Arthur stopped. His expression softened, shifting from the imperious duke to the man she had saved in the alley. You get safety, he said quietly. My name is a shield that not even Vane can break. You get wealth, enough to pay your brother's debts 1,000 times over. And you get me. He said it without arrogance, as a simple fact. And is that a prize? She challenged softly. Arthur smiled, a crooked, weary thing that made her heart stutter. I am told I can be quite charming when I'm not bleeding to death. He reached into the pocket of his robe and pulled out a ring. It wasn't a delicate diamond. It was a heavy, ancient thing, gold, set with a ruby the size of a quail's egg, dark as blood. This was my grandmother's, he said. She was a terrifying woman. She once shot a highwayman who tried to stop her carriage. It seems fitting for you. Beatrice looked at the ring, then at Arthur. She thought of her brother Thomas gambling his life away. She thought of the drudgery of her life, the grey walls, the endless bowing and scraping to people who looked through her. Then she looked at Arthur St. Clair, a man who saw her. She reached out and took the ring. It was warm from his body heat. She slid it onto her finger. It was loose but heavy, anchoring. If we do this, Beatrice said, I am not going to be a silent prop in your house, Arthur. If I am to be a target, I want to know how to shoot back. Arthur's grin widened, predatory and appreciative. I would expect nothing less. Get dressed, Beatrice. The Archbishop is coming at noon. We have a wedding to attend. The chapel roar was unavailable on such short notice, so the ceremony took place in the private sanctuary of Stirling House. It was a stark, rushed affair. There were no flowers, no choir, no weeping relatives. Just Kensington standing as witness, a terrified curate who couldn't stop staring at the Duke's bandaged neck, and the two of them. Beatrice wore a gown of deep sapphire velvet that Arthur had somehow procured in 3 hours. It fit her imperfectly, slightly tight in the bodice, which only served to make her feel more exposed. As she stood at the altar, the weight of the moment crashed down on her. I, Arthur, take thee, Beatrice. His voice was steady, grounding her. When he took her hand to slide a simple gold band next to the ruby signet, his thumb brushed her wrist, feeling her racing pulse. He squeezed her hand, a silent signal. I have you. Breathe. I, Beatrice, take thee, Arthur. She said the words, and the air in the room shifted. It wasn't a lie anymore. The legal bind was done. She was the Duchess of Stirling. As the curate signed the register, Arthur turned to her. He didn't kiss her, not like he had in the gambling hall. He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. It was a chaste gesture, but the heat of it burned all the way to her toes. The easy part is done, he murmured against her skin. Now comes the performance. The performance? Tonight, Arthur said, stepping back and offering his arm. Lady Jersey is hosting the first ball of the mid-season. Everyone will be there, including Silas Vane. Beatrice felt her blood run cold. You want to go out? Tonight? You were shot yesterday. If I stay home, Vane wins. He will say I am dying. He will say I am weak. We must show them that the Duke of Stirling is not only alive but thriving. He looked her up and down, his eyes dark. And that he has found a wife who is the envy of the town. The entrance to Lady Jersey's ballroom was a gauntlet. The moment the major domo announced the Duke and Duchess of Stirling, the music literally stopped. Hundreds of heads turned, fans froze in mid-flutter. The silence was absolute, a vacuum of shock. Beatrice gripped Arthur's arm so hard She feared she might reopen his wound. He covered her hand with his own, his grip iron hard. "Chin up," he whispered. "Look at them as if they owe you money." They descended the grand staircase. Beatrice felt the eyes raking over her, judging her dress, her hair, her face, searching for a flaw, a reason why she, a nobody, was on the arm of the Golden Duke. But Arthur gave them no room to doubt. He walked with a regal indifference, leaning toward Beatrice to whisper things that looked like lovers' secrets but were actually tactical updates. "To your left, Lord Avery, owes me 10,000. Ignore him. To the right, Lady Sefton. She's the gossip columnist. Smile at her, but don't stop." They reached the floor, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. "Your Grace." Lady Jersey fluttered forward, her eyes wide with manufactured delight. "We had heard rumors. But a wedding. And so sudden. We were devastated not to receive an invitation." "It was a whirlwind romance, Sally," Arthur drawled, using the hostess's first name with the casual ease of a man who owned the building. "When one finds a diamond in the dust, one does not wait for the jewelers to open. One takes it." He looked at Beatrice, and for a moment the acting stopped. There was a genuine warmth in his eyes that confused her. Was he that good of an actor? Or was the adrenaline forging a bond between them that mimicked love? "May I have this dance, Duchess?" he asked. "Your leg," she whispered. "I can manage a waltz if you hold me up." He swept her onto the floor. As the orchestra began a slow, sweeping melody, Beatrice found that she fit into his arms perfectly. He moved stiffly, pain etched in the corners of his eyes, but he refused to falter. They spun through the candlelight, a bubble of intimacy in a room full of sharks. "You are doing beautifully," Arthur said softly. "They are terrified of you." "They are confused by me," Beatrice corrected. "Same thing. Confusion breeds fear." As the music swelled, a shadow fell over them. A man had cut into the dance floor, moving against the flow of the other couples. It was Lord Silas Vane. He was dressed in black silk, looking like a venomous snake in a garden of flowers. He stopped right next to them as the music paused for a beat. "Your Grace," Vane said, bowing low. His eyes, however, stayed fixed on Beatrice and the new Duchess. My, the transformation is remarkable, from mouse to lioness in 24 hours. Arthur stopped dancing, his arm tightened around Beatrice's waist, pulling her flush against him. "Vane, I am surprised to see you. I thought you'd be halfway to Calais by now." "Why would I leave?" Vane smiled, showing too many teeth. "I have business in London, unfinished business." He looked at Beatrice. "May I steal the bride for a turn? It is tradition." "She is tired," Arthur said coldly. "I don't mind," Beatrice said suddenly. Arthur looked down at her, alarmed. "Beatrice." "I am not afraid of him, Arthur," she lied. She needed to know what Vane wanted. She needed to look the monster in the eye. She stepped out of Arthur's arms and placed her hand on Vane's sleeve. "One dance, Lord Vane." Arthur looked ready to draw a sword, but he nodded once, his jaw tight. "I will be watching." Vane swept her into the crowd. His grip was clammy, unlike Arthur's dry warmth. He danced with a jerky, aggressive rhythm that made Beatrice stumble. "You played a bold hand, Miss Galloway," Vane hissed in her ear. "Marrying him. Do you think that ring protects you?" "I think the Duke of Stirling is a dangerous enemy, my lord," Beatrice replied coolly. "And I think you should be careful." Vane laughed softly. "You think Arthur is the hero of this story? You poor, stupid girl. He didn't tell you, did he?" Beatrice missed a step. Tell me what? Vane spun her around, pulling her close so his lips brushed her ear. About your father, Henry Galloway. Beatrice froze. My father died of a heart attack. He died penniless because of bad investments. Investments? Vane scoffed her. Henry Galloway was a code-breaker for the War Office. He found something he shouldn't have. He found proof that a high-ranking British noble was selling naval secrets to the French. You're lying. Am I? Your father was poisoned, Beatrice. And the man who was supposed to protect him, the man who was his handler, the man who failed to show up the night he died. Vane paused for maximum cruelty. That man was a young, ambitious lord named Arthur St. Clair. The world tilted on its axis. The ballroom blurred. No, Beatrice whispered. That's impossible. Arthur has the ledger now. Vane whispered. Ask him to open it. Ask him whose name is on the last page as the asset that was terminated. He didn't marry you to save you, my dear. He married you out of guilt. He married you to keep you close, so you never find out that he is the reason you are an orphan. The music ended. Vane released her abruptly, leaving her standing in the center of the floor, shivering as if she had been doused in ice water. Across the room, Arthur was watching her. He saw her pale face. He started moving toward her, concern etched on his features. But for the first time, Beatrice didn't see a savior. She saw a stranger. She backed away. The crowd was clapping, but all she could hear was the rushing of blood in her ears. She turned and ran. Not toward Arthur, but toward the terrace doors, gasping for air, her heart breaking into 1,000 sharp pieces. Arthur reached the spot where she had stood moments later. He grabbed Vane by the lapels, ignoring the gasps of the crowd. What did you say to her? Arthur snarled, his voice a low growl of fury. Vane just smiled, smoothing his cravat. I just gave her a wedding present, Your Grace. The truth. Beatrice didn't stop running until she reached the stone balustrade of the terrace. The London fog was thick, obscuring the garden below, matching the haze in her mind. He knew. Arthur St. Clair wasn't just a random encounter. He wasn't just a duke she had stumbled upon. He was the architect of her misery. Every night she had gone to bed hungry, every tear she had shed over her father's grave, it was all tied to him. Beatrice. The voice came from behind her. She didn't turn. She couldn't bear to look at his face. Arthur limped onto the terrace, the pain in his leg forgotten in his panic. Beatrice. Wait. What did he tell you? You cannot trust a word that serpent says. Did you know my father? The question hung in the damp air, sharp and absolute. Arthur stopped. The silence stretched, agonizing and damning. Beatrice, please, let me explain. She spun around, her eyes wet with angry tears. Did? You? No, him. Arthur looked down, his shoulders slumping. The arrogant duke vanished, replaced by a man carrying a mountain of regret. Yes. Was he murdered? Yes. And you... Beatrice's voice broke. Vane said you were his handler. That you failed him. Arthur looked up, his eyes shining with a tortured light. I was 22 years old. I was arrogant. I thought I could catch the traitor and save your father in the same night. I made a choice. I chose to pursue the intelligence instead of securing the safe house. He took a step toward her, his hand reaching out. I arrived an hour too late. I found him. I held him as he died, Beatrice. His last words were of you. He made me promise to look after you. Look after me. Beatrice laughed, a harsh, hysterical sound. I have been starving for 5 years. I have been living in squalor, while you sat in your palace. I couldn't find you, Arthur shouted back, his composure shattering. Your aunt took you away. She changed her name back to her maiden name. I searched for years. I had Pinkerton agents scouring the countryside. Why do you think I was at Vane's gambling hall? I wasn't just looking for the ledger. I heard a rumor that Henry's son, your brother, was in debt there. I went there to find Thomas, hoping he would lead me to you. He stopped, breathing hard, his chest heaving. When you ran down those stairs, when you took off that mask, Arthur's voice dropped to a whisper. I thought I was seeing a ghost. You have his eyes. I didn't marry you to hide my guilt, Beatrice. I married you because for 5 years your safety has been the only thing that mattered to me. I failed him. I swore I would not fail you. Beatrice stared at him. The anger was still there, hot and burning, but beneath it was confusion. He had been looking for her. He had walked into Vane's trap for Thomas. And the ledger? She asked quietly. Vane said your name is in it. Vane is a liar? Arthur said. My name is not in the ledger, but his is. Arthur reached into his coat and pulled out the black book. This is the proof that Silas Vane sold out your father. Vane was the traitor. He killed your father to cover his tracks. He held the book out to her. Take it. Read it. Burn it. It's yours. Beatrice looked at the book, then she looked at the terrace doors. Shadows were moving there. Arthur! She screamed. A figure emerged from the darkness, not Vane, but a younger man, dishevelled and wild-eyed, holding a heavy dueling pistol. Thomas! Beatrice gasped. Her brother stood there shaking, the gun pointed not at Arthur but at Beatrice. I'm sorry, Bea, Thomas sobbed. Vane, he has my markers. He said he'd forgive the debt, all of it. £5,000. Thomas, put the gun down, Arthur said, his voice instantly turning to commanding steel. He stepped in front of Beatrice, shielding her again. Vane is using you. He won't forgive the debt. He'll kill you the moment you pull that trigger. He has the papers, Thomas yelled, hysterical. He said all I have to do is get the book. Give me the book, Beatrice. Thomas, look at me, Beatrice said, stepping out from behind Arthur, ignoring Arthur's attempt to stop her. This is the man who killed father. Vane killed father. Thomas blinked, the gun wavering. What? No. Vane said father died of a weak heart. He said he was his friend. He lied, Arthur said. He murdered your father because Henry Galloway found out Vane was selling England to the French. I don't know who to believe, Thomas cried. Suddenly, a slow clap echoed from the shadows. Silas Vane stepped out, a smirk on his face. 2 large guards stood behind him. Bravo, Vane drawled. A family reunion. How touching. He looked at Thomas. Shoot her, boy, or I shoot you. Simple economics. Thomas's hand shook violently. He looked at his sister, then at the Duke, then at Vane. I can't, Thomas whispered. He lowered the gun. Pity. Vane sighed. He raised his own hand. He wasn't holding a pistol, he snapped his fingers. From the garden below a shot rang out. It wasn't aimed at Beatrice. Arthur jerked violently, a bloom of red exploding on his shoulder, the same shoulder that had been grazed the night before. He crumpled to the stone floor. Arthur, Beatrice screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. Now, Vane said, walking forward and kicking the pistol out of Thomas's hand. He loomed over them, snatching the ledger from the ground where Arthur had dropped it. The Duke is dead, Vane announced to his guards. Tragic. A duel with his new brother-in-law gone wrong. The brother-in-law. Well, He was so distraught he turned the gun on himself. He pointed to the guards. "Throw the boy off the balcony. And the girl. Bring her to my carriage. I have a use for a widowed duchess." Beatrice looked at Arthur. His eyes were open but glazing over. He gripped her hand, his strength failing. "Run!" he wheezed. Beatrice looked at her brother, who was being dragged toward the edge by a guard. She looked at Vane, who was tucking the ledger into his coat, victorious. Something inside Beatrice Galloway broke, and something else, something cold and hard like the diamond Arthur had called her, took its place. She didn't run. She reached into the folds of her sapphire dress. Her hand closed around the small, heavy object she had stolen from Arthur's study before they left for the ball. She had told him she wanted to know how to shoot back. She hadn't waited for a lesson. She pulled out the double-barreled pocket pistol. "Lord Vane," she cried out. Vane turned, smiling. "Yes, my dear." Beatrice didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch. She pulled the trigger. The explosion of the pocket pistol was deafening in the enclosed stone space of the terrace. A flash of sparks, a cloud of acrid smoke, and then silence. Lord Silas Vane staggered back, clutching his chest. He looked down, his face a mask of utter disbelief. A blossom of crimson was spreading rapidly across his white silk waistcoat. He looked at Beatrice, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. "You," he gurgled. "You bit me." He collapsed backward, hitting the stone floor with a wet thud. The ledger slid from his grasp, skittering across the flagstones to stop at Beatrice's feet. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The guards, stunned that a woman in a ball gown had just shot one of the most powerful men in London, hesitated. That hesitation was all Thomas needed. The sight of his sister, his brave, suffering sister, turning into an avenging angel, snapped him out of his cowardice. He roared, throwing himself at the guard nearest to the balcony edge, tackling him with the desperate strength of a man with nothing left to lose. "Get him out of here, Bee," Thomas screamed, grappling with the man. Beatrice didn't freeze. She dropped the smoking pistol and fell to her knees beside Arthur. He was pale, his breathing shallow, the wound in his shoulder bleeding profusely. "Arthur," she cried, pressing her hand over the wound. "Arthur, stay with me." The terrace doors burst open. The guests, drawn by the gunshot, flooded out. At the front was the Prime Minister himself, William Pitt, flanked by 2 officers. "What is the meaning of this?" Pitt demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Beatrice looked up. Her hands were covered in her husband's blood. Her dress was ruined, but her eyes were clear. She snatched the black ledger from the floor and held it up. "Lord Vane is a traitor to the crown," she announced, her voice ringing with the authority Arthur had told her to use. "He murdered my father, Henry Galloway, to cover his theft of naval secrets. He attempted to murder the Duke of Stirling tonight. And this book contains the names of every French agent he has sold us to." Pitt looked at the dying Vane, then at the ledger, and finally at the fierce young woman holding the bleeding Duke. He signalled his officers. "Seize Vane's men," Pitt ordered. He stepped forward and took the ledger from Beatrice's trembling hand. "And get a surgeon. The Duke is down." As the soldiers swarmed the terrace, arresting Vane's guards and securing the area, Beatrice didn't watch. She bent low over Arthur, brushing the hair from his damp forehead. "You can't die," she whispered fiercely. "You promised me an alliance. You promised me safety. If you die now, Arthur St. Clair, I will never forgive you." Arthur's eyelids fluttered. He looked up at her, his vision swimming. A faint, bloody smile touched his lips. "You shot him," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "I did. My grandmother," Arthur wheezed, "would have loved you." Then his eyes rolled back, and the Duke of Stirling knew no more. The fever lasted for 3 days. Stirling House became a fortress of silence. Straw was laid down on the cobblestones outside to muffle the sound of carriage wheels. The best physicians in London came and went, shaking their heads and muttering about infection and blood loss. Beatrice did not leave his side. She slept in the armchair by the fire. She fed him broth, drop by drop. She changed his bandages, ignoring the gruesome sight of the wound Vane's bullet had made. Kensington, the stoic butler, tried to make her rest, but she refused. "I am his wife," she told him on the second night. "I am the only thing standing between him and the dark. I am not leaving." It was on the 4th morning, when the rain was lashing against the window panes, that the fever broke. Beatrice was dozing in the chair, her hand resting on the coverlet near his. She felt a movement, a weak squeeze of her fingers. She jolted awake. Arthur was watching her. His eyes were clear, the glassy haze of fever gone. He looked exhausted, hollowed out, but he was there. "You look terrible," he croaked. Beatrice let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You should look in a mirror, Your Grace." "Did we win?" "Vane is dead," Beatrice said softly. "He died before they could get him to the prison. The Prime Minister has the ledger. They are arresting his conspirators as we speak. You are a hero, Arthur. They are calling you the saviour of the Admiralty." Arthur closed his eyes, a look of profound relief washing over him. "And Thomas?" Beatrice hesitated. "Thomas is downstairs. He turned himself in. He told the magistrate everything about the gambling debts and how Vane manipulated him. Because of his testimony, and because he saved the guard from shooting me, they are being lenient. But he has to leave England. He's taking a commission in the East India Company. He sails on the morning tide." Arthur nodded slowly. "It is for the best. The boy needs to become a man away from the tables." He turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. "And you? Are you leaving too? The debt is paid. Vane is gone. You are free, Beatrice." Beatrice looked at their joined hands. The ruby ring on her finger caught the firelight. She thought of the fear she had lived with for 5 years. She thought of the moment she kissed him in the ballroom. She thought of the way he had looked at her when he told her she was brave. "There is one thing I still don't understand," she said quietly. "Vane said you were responsible for my poverty, that you failed my father and left us to rot." Arthur sighed, a ragged sound. "I told you I failed to save his life. But I never abandoned you. Every month for 5 years I sent an allowance of £50 to the address Henry had given me for your aunt. It was a fortune, enough for you to live like a queen's." Beatrice went still. "We never received a penny. We lived on scraps. I scrubbed floors." "I know," Arthur said, his voice hard with old anger. "I found out during the investigation last week, Vane was the executor of the bank where the transfers were handled. He intercepted every payment. He stole the money I sent you to keep you weak, to keep you desperate, hoping one day you or your brother would come to him for help. It was his way of punishing Henry even after death." Tears pricked Beatrice's eyes. It hadn't been neglect. It had been theft. Arthur had been trying to save her from the very beginning, even when he didn't know where she was. So, Arthur whispered, his thumb stroking her knuckles. I failed you. I let a thief steal your life. If you want to go, Beatrice, I will give you half my fortune and an annulment. You can be free of the danger of being a St. Clair. Beatrice stood up. For a terrifying second, Arthur thought she was leaving. Instead, she sat gently on the edge of the bed. She reached out and touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw, the shadow of his beard. You asked me once if I wanted to be a partner who wasn't afraid of fire, she said softly. I did. Well, Beatrice smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Arthur had ever seen. I think I've developed a taste for the heat. She leaned down and kissed him. It wasn't the desperate, frantic kiss of the gambling hall. It was slow, tender, and full of a promise that would last a lifetime. I am not going anywhere, Arthur, she whispered against his lips. I am the Duchess of Stirling, and I have a husband to look after. Arthur let out a long, contented breath, pulling her down so her head rested on his uninjured shoulder. Good, he murmured, closing his eyes. Because I have a feeling, my love, that the trouble is just beginning. Outside, the rain cleared, and for the first time in a week, the sun broke through the clouds over London, shining on the house where the richest duke in England held his greatest treasure. Not gold, not land, but the woman who had kissed him to save his life. And that is the incredible story of Beatrice Galloway and Arthur St. Clair. From a desperate gamble in a den of thieves to the highest halls of power, Beatrice proved that sometimes the biggest risk isn't betting money, it's betting on love. I love how this story twists the classic damsel in distress trope. Beatrice didn't just wait to be saved. She walked into the line of fire, she lied to a lord, and when push came to shove, she was the one holding the pistol. It's a reminder that true partnership is about standing back to back when the world is against you. What did you think of the twist about the letters? Did you suspect Vane was stealing the money all along? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of romance, danger, and betrayal, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want more stories like this, where history meets heartbeat, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a chapter. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.